Hi, everyone. It's Nancy with For Your Canine.
And Joanne with For Better For Worse.
And Lisa Batasco with Canine Defined.
And 1-800 Hot Voice. Anyway, welcome all. Let us know you're there. Today, we're going to talk about canine enrichment and behavior and just some ideas and things to think about. Most of the people that listen already do a lot of stuff with their dogs, but um, for those of you who are looking for maybe different things or ideas of other things you can do, especially when life happens, right? Sometimes you can be ill or you have to stay home for look at COVID. We had to stay home for quite a long time. So all of those things that maybe you might not be able to get out and do your normal activities so you can do other things with your dogs, and it's really unlimited what you can do because it really depends on what your dog finds entertaining and fun and all that. It's not what we think, it's what they think. And one of the things about enrichment, because and this is going to sound a little philosophical, but here I go. Some of the dogs, like some of our dogs, that those of us who do dog sports, they do lead a different life than a regular pet dog. They're still our pets, number one, but they do live a different lifestyle, right? And there's nothing wrong with either lifestyle, right? Because before all of us got into dog sports, I had dogs and they were just our pets. And you think back about when you had those dogs. Like I really wasn't into dog sports. We had a little bit of training here and there, but the most of their those dogs enrichment was walks, going for a walk. It wasn't very much. It wasn't anything else more than that. Granted, it was a long time ago. The dog world has changed quite a lot in that time. But you think back, those dogs, they really didn't do much. They were just at home. They woke up, they ate, they went for walks, hung out with you, and that was pretty much their life. So for some of those dogs, and for some dogs, that's okay. But now with some of the dogs that are problem dogs that are too active or busy, it's basically a lack of enrichment, right? That they don't have any mental stimulation, or and because it's not always physical stimulation, it's always a mental stimulation is really important too. So it's one of those things that some dogs can just hang out. Like I'll be honest, my shepherd be happy to stay home, just chill out, play ball a little bit, go for walks. He would be happy, 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 happy. He wouldn't need anything else. My lab would probably need a little more activity because she's a little more apt to want to do more things. So she might be more destructive or more challenging if you don't keep her busy, right?
Bam would eat his way into the neighborhood if I did not do things with him. Leave it to a Doberman.
Well, and it's true, right? Depending on the dog, some dogs, again, they can just chill and they don't have to do anything, and other dogs, they need some kind of mental stimulation because they're bored, right? Um, so I just wanted to kind of wanted you to think about that because it's very dog dependent, right? What's going to be what how much enrichment they need and how much they want to do really is very dog dependent. Some dogs, if you give them a Kong every once in a while, that's good enough, right? Other dogs, that would just be a warm up, or a walk would be a warm up. so so you really want to think about that when you're um, thinking about how to enrich your dog, because there's there's a lot of different ways to do it, and it's basically finding what your dog finds fun and entertaining and interesting, right? And Lisa does a lot of enrichment to the shelter dogs. So um, because it's almost like yeah, yeah, almost like I and it is kind of like a doggy jail, right? The shelter, because in our human jails they get to work out and they don't get out much. They're kind of there's not much of a life there, right? So
Well, in the actually in other countries, they did a study and they said that they found that or they ruled that anything over was it 7 days and social isolation is considered torture. So you can imagine what it's like for our dogs that are in shelter situations that aren't getting out as much. They do go crazy, just like any other animals in captivity, such as zoo animals. They have stereotypical behavior. So behavior is a barometer of where the dog is. And so, yeah, enrichment is really important because getting out for walks is not enough, especially for those dogs. So when we do stuff, Kongs are great. We were just talking about that before we went on. I love the Kongs, but I actually prefer topples because they're much easier to clean. But basically stuffing those and giving them to the dogs, that's great, but it's not enough. And so some other things we'll talk a little bit about are some more makeshift types of enrichment that you can do for dogs that don't require a lot of money and stuff like that. Those are other things to consider as well.
Mhm. And so again, you guys, one of the things to consider is moderation, right? Because some of us can get a little bit more energized and we're constantly keeping the dog busy. So the dogs also need some downtime. So just putting that out there because some of us can be a little type A and and have
Did
the
you
dog doing stuff all the time.
wasn't that was that an article that just came out this week? Something about type A personality people like dragging their dogs along for their energy.
Yeah.
Did you read that?
No.
Okay, it just came out, and it was just sort of talking about the people who like don't like to sit still, and they don't like to not be doing something. And they always want to be busy, and then they get a dog, and that you have to be careful with that too, right? Because that dog did not sign up to be the type A person's dog. You might have had a Newfoundland who's like, please, can I just lay on the couch?
Right, especially well, yeah, right. So if you have that kind of lifestyle, you want that, you should get a dog that's gonna be okay in that lifestyle, like a German Shorthair Pointer, or a Field Lab, or or
But a Doberman of certain lineage.
exactly, or
So
well, your Border Collie's pretty chilled, right, Lisa? He's pretty.
Yeah, he's pretty good, actually. The one who's a pain in the butt is the cattle dog.
Yeah,
She's like, you just get up and move, and she's all like, zoom, gotta go. And I'm like, and it's been terrible since I've been, recovering and stuff. I fall asleep, and next thing you know, I have a bunch of toys on me. They're like, well, just in case you wake up,
it's broken. Broken.
I know. I'm like,
Quarters, it won't
guys,
go.
come on. Lay down. This is when I regret having having the active dogs because I'm like, would you just relax? So yeah, it's a different story, but
that's funny. She's like, I have all the toys. Well, yeah, I kind of Tango can be that way sometimes. He'll bring me like I'll have like when I look, I'll have like 6 toys on me. I'm like, what? Especially if I'm working on a cleaner. But that's what I mean, right? If you have an active lifestyle or you have certain things that you want to do, you want to make sure that you get the dog that's going to be able to do those things because like some dogs are just going to be chilled, going for a walk, Kongs every so often, some family stuff. That's enough enrichment for the dog, right? And other dogs, you've got to give them a little bit more. But dogs do need some, so that's why, and that's where we see a lot of behavior problems because the dogs, a lot of them are not mentally stimulated, right? You put them in the yard, just a yard, being outside in the yard that they get to be out in the yard every day. Just leaving them out there is not enough enrichment, right?
No. My dogs come and stand at the door. Are you coming out with us? And I'm like, no, go away, be dogs. But nope, they want someone out there with them for sure.
Mm-hmm. Right. Because it's the yard they're in. A lot of people think just putting them out in the yard, they should be good. And that's not enrichment, you guys. Unless you've got, I did have a client, the dog was digging up the yard and obviously it was bored. So we talked about building a sandbox for the dog. So he did a really cool, put a hole in the yard in the corner, and took the dirt, put sand in there, and put bricks all around it. So when she dug it up, it would stay in that. And so he would put toys in there and treats in there, and the dog would be able to go in and dig it up. And she stopped, obviously, digging up the rest of the yard. She was really into that. And he did a really, really nice job. So he had time clearly to do that because it was really nice.
Yeah, if you have a dog that really does like to sniff or explore or constantly has their nose on the ground, I know back when mine were younger, I made like take a handful of something like Zooks, something real small and dark, right? And you just right, and they watch them fly from your hand, and they're like, oh, and they run out into the yard, and it might take them 10, 15 minutes, and to be fair, I would only recommend doing one dog at a time.
Yeah.
If you have any food issues in your house, but that's always like a really great game to play. Oh yeah, I guess Elizabeth said that too, huh? Kibble scatters. Yeah. So like I just chuck stuff into the yard and they're already out there sniffing and they're like, oh, cookie. And then once they find one or two, then they really start hunting. And any of you guys that do nose work, you know how tired that makes them, right?
Yes. Awesome.
So not only is it enriching, but it's also hard work.
Yeah. So, and Joanna and I were talking about this. So if you think about what the shelter situation is how canine nose work became to be. They started canine nose work at the shelter at the SPCA, I think in California, because the dogs were bored, so they just had them searching in boxes for food. That is how it was born, right? Trying to give the dogs in the shelter more an enriched life, and it's turned into this great thing because the dogs sniffing is a really interesting for the dogs, and it's what they're bred to do, and they enjoy it so much. So being able to do that as part of an enrichment is really great. But that's how this whole sport of canine nose work came to be, because they started to do it in the shelters with the rescue dogs. So it's really really cool. That big thing came out of that. So it's one of those things that you never know what trying to be intuitive and seeing what your dog really enjoys, because it really has to be something your dog likes, right? Like if your dog likes playing ball more than they like sniffing and all that stuff, you want to be able to do that, right? And be able to present that to the dog, and hopefully the dog likes it. If you are having to force your dog to do a specific thing, it's not enriching. It's not enriching, and you probably shouldn't do it.
In the shelter, I'm sorry, go ahead.
That's what I was just going to say. I know, like, I had talked with Lisa, I don't know, a month ago or something, right? You hide random stuff, right? So it doesn't have to be food. Like, what are some of the things you hide? Was that what you were going to say?
Yeah. So like, sometimes we do like, they have the little paper cups for, for whatever, like swishing your teeth and stuff like that, whatever they call that. I can't think right now. Mouthwash. Anyway, I know I'm a little out of it, but I'll do like little bone broth. I'll put some fruits in it and stuff like that, and then a little duck foot, freeze it, and then give it to the dogs so they have a little popsicle. Dr. Karen Bacher had talked about different types of foods that are appropriate for that. And then we'll also do like duck foot in a paper bag. So with the shelter community, because it's very hard with funding, you have to look at things that are super easy. So not everybody can afford a topple, or, you know what I mean, expending that kind of money towards it. So everybody has boxes and paper products, right? Paper towels, rolls, or toilet paper rolls. You can put kibbles in it, close on the ends, throw it in a box. And then you can do things like different scents and smells, peppermint, vanilla, and then different kinds of swipes of, Brunschwager, or what do you call it? Cream cheese and stuff like that. So different smells and different kinds of things in there that are going to affect all the different senses, and different textures, right? Remember, it's a foraging behavior. So then you close up the box and then you give it to the dogs and they'll rip it apart. It's something that's nice and easy. It's things that people can do at home. That's not very costly or purchasing. I mean, I know, Joanne, you had shown some of the puzzle toys before we were talking about this. But the puzzle toys are great. But then once the dogs figure out, done, you're like, okay, what else can I do? How can I get my dogs to do more? So it's pretty interesting. But for the shelter dogs and stuff like that. But like you said, like we were talking about, enrichment entails so much. It's not just things to eat, it's things to smell or taste or touch or feel or stand on, or all of the senses, right? The five senses we want to affect.
Right. And so there's the the first and we'll kind of there's different categories for some of the canine enrichment. So we'll kind of start with the obvious one, which is hold on one second. I'll do one at a time so that way it's all right. Is the first one is food. Let's see. There. First one is food. So those are ways you can do prolonged feeding times, and this is where it goes for puzzle toys um, or like Lisa was saying, the popsicle stuff like that. Foraging for scraps, right? And there's that's where I think snuffle mat might come into play for that. Long lasting bones and chews and things like that. So that's a pretty obvious one that a lot of us as trainers recommend to folks, Kongs, all that to help them. And also food puzzles. So Joanne had, and Lisa had a couple of really nice food puzzles that you can just, they're pretty inexpensive and they can just, for some dogs that are much more active, definitely having, slow eat, where they have to work for their food is ideal. It's really good because in that way they can just be, it'll take them a little while to eat. They'll get some mental stimulation that way, and then you can, you can start the day if you can. There are some dogs, however, that might look at you like you're crazy, and why are you making me work for my food? Because I don't do that. So. So again, you really definitely have to make sure that your dog is on board with that, because some dogs is like I have people for that. So
Well, I think it's interesting because like it depends, right? There's a levels of challenges, right? So if I have a dog who doesn't want to do that much, then the scatter in the ground might be okay, but maybe not enough. And it totally depends on who the dog is. But I've had dogs in the shelter who are like, no, that's a lot of work. So instead of closing the box, we left it open. And for those dogs who are a little more interested in tearing and shredding and things apart, we have a dog and he's pretty funny. He's a weenie about everything, but he likes to rip things apart. And so we had some paper bags and I'll give it to him and he's like, he shreds and he's like, yeah, that was great. And so we did it again. He's like, yeah, that was great. And it was all the same stuff, but he just liked the activity of actually doing that. Then I go to give him a Kong. He's like, that's stupid. And I'm like, okay, whatever makes you happy. So yeah, it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting what they like. Yeah, because we've had dogs that, and so the other one is sensory, right? Sight, sound, touch, smell, taste. And this is a great idea, which I have never thought of, is an herb garden. I never even thought of that.
Yeah.
Being able to give your dog some novel odors or things to sniff, besides the same stuff in your yard that you always get. An herb garden would allow them to have different things to explore and things like that. So I thought that was so cool.
One of the things we were talking about doing at the shelter was having an area for a sensory garden that had water feature, different kinds of textures and stuff to walk through, and then different herbs. And you can take like the pallets and then plant stuff and then have it grow over and along a fence and everything. Yeah, it's really cool stuff.
Right. And then and here they talk a little bit about touch. So you can, depending on what, a massage or whatever, that's an enrichment activity, right? For your dogs, if they're into that, right?
Yeah, and so Tammy says my dog likes to shred, but then she wants to eat what she shredded. So Tammy, it is a bummer, but like if she really really likes it, do you have big dog or small dog? Because it's a big dog.
Yeah.
Because I mean, there's things like if you have funding to spend, right? I mean, you can do things like they make things out of rice paper, so you can wrap things in rice. You can wrap food in rice paper and let her, shred that, and then it's edible. Seaweed, I think, would be another one, like a kelp roll type of thing, where that's nice and crunchy, and they could shred it into a million pieces, and if they eat it, it's not going to hurt them. I don't know. Can you guys think of anything else? Like,
Uh,
I
well,
think
go ahead, Lisa.
I guess I think I would also remember too, like some of the stuff is novel. You want to think about corrugated versus like a thinner.
Mm-hmm.
Is it that maybe I had a little Boston or a little Frenchie who would go nuts over, like I gave him a paper bag with treats in it to try and help to expend some energy and stuff to help the people, his parents. And he was like, that's stupid. And he didn't even care about what was in it. But then I gave him a corrugated box and he ripped that sucker up and he was in seventh heaven. He just wanted to tear and hear it, feel it, shred and tear and stuff like that. And he just, yeah. And then by the end, his tongue was like a bow tie hanging out and he was super happy about it. So I think too, you want to think about the type of texture, the thickness of what you're giving them too.
mm-hmm.
Right. So they're not eating that. All right. So the next thing, and so yeah, the sensory part, because there's also I like the herb garden idea a lot, and different tastes, which goes back to Lisa's putting it in a bag and letting them tear it up with the different, something different, yummy in that thing.
I will tell you one that I used that I thought was the funniest thing ever, and I didn't mean it. Somebody had given it to me, and I brought it in the house. Was a Mylar balloon.
Yeah.
And that thing, the dog was like, and it moved, like you could get close and it would move a little, and then I gotta see what that is. It was probably 20 minutes of just checking that thing out and like need a nap afterwards. It was just funny. I mean, it wasn't a fearful thing. It was just, what is that? Why does it move? What's it doing? Why is it floating? So,
right.
Well,
So
they use. Go ahead.
For the visual, sometimes for the visual,
right.
it's and that's where the visual too comes into, where you throw a ball and things like that, right? For those dogs that like that, right?
The kids balls, those little balls that you can purchase for like a few bucks in the store you're passing by, and it's just a rubber ball, whatever. I remember playing that with Simon. We'd bounce it back and forth and he'd bop it back to me and we'd just go back and forth playing ball with it. He loved it. It was his favorite thing. And then speaking of that, think about the horse balls they have for horses. Yeah. The egg balls, the big, huge, hard jolly balls and stuff like that. Things for outside that are different. I think I remember another little Boston Terrier actually who adored the egg ball, and I'm like, take it. He loves it, and it tired him out, but he adored it. It was fun to watch him.
Well, and those hard balls. Sue Poor can do a whole dissertation about the dangers of those.
Yeah.
And he needed a root canal after playing with that. So everything in moderation, people.
Remember when we were doing tri-ball and Luke, he was like excited about the ball and he popped it because he's like, yeah.
So yeah, no. Susan can tell us all about the dangers of the red hard ball. And he was like, I'm gonna kill it. All right. The other thing is cognition, which we talked a little bit about, right? Food in a box, puzzles, training time, and education. So training time, and again, it doesn't have to be a long time. It can be 5 minutes.
It's about time.
Yeah. It could be like 5 minutes of training. So like I told our folks, you don't have to train like an hour a day. A few minutes goes a long way, right? And have them use their brain instead of just laying around not doing anything. And again, the cardboard box is cognitive. That's why some of the dogs that do nose work, especially some of the older dogs, they really do pretty well. They stay pretty mentally sharp and pretty active when they do nose work. They stay pretty with it.
Well, and this is just the funniest story. We laughed and laughed and laughed. I was staying at Nancy's, and this was when Bam was younger. And he,
Oh, yes.
when he's like tired a little bit, he is almost like that 2-year-old fighting sleep, and he's like, I'm not tired, and then he runs around like a crazy dog and he won't settle. And so we went out on her back porch, and he looks creepy right now. I just want you to know that he's like,
He wants to see his people. He wants
Yes.
to see his people.
So we went out there, and we were like, the stuff he knew, right? We were combining between sits, downs, and stands. I think that was it. That was the only 3 exercises. And he was like, yeah, I know that. And we're like, didn't want that one. I want this one. He's like, wait, what? Like, I think it was maybe 5 to 7 minutes. That's it. And then his blink rate slowed significantly. He was like, okay, I need to go to bed now. And boom, in the crate and out like a light. It was hilarious.
and because we did 3 things, we just mixed it up, and
Right.
the dog, it just, so that's what I mean. It doesn't mean that you have to spend so much time. And the truth is, in a very short time, can teach your dogs a lot of stuff, which is really cool, right? You can you can really teach a lot of things that will that's just gonna enhance their life, and then they're gonna be tired, or they're gonna be more relaxed, and they're just better companions all around, right? Instead of just putting them out in the yard. Because I think sometimes, and we've talked about this before, if you only do physical exercise and no mental, they just become stronger and it can go longer. So they're not really, you're just conditioning them better, I guess is a better way to say it. You're conditioning them better, right? Instead of,
It's like, not me. Don't condition me.
Oh my gosh.
so
I told you he looked angry.
he totally smacked him in the head. So, anywho, yeah, the cat's like, that's it. She's had enough. He's had enough of him. But making sure that you also work their minds is really important, because people just focus on physical exercise, and unfortunately, they can go longer being annoying, right? If you just only do the physical part, you have to do some mental stimulation too. So.
When I do day school and stuff, and I have the dogs, they learn how to be created around other dogs. They learn how to be next to other dogs as they are working, or stuff like that. We also do enrichment activities as well as training, and we mix it up throughout the day, in addition to social activities, right, of engaging each other and stuff like that. And I told you guys earlier, we had this little girl, Gabby was her name, and she's a little miniature golden doodle. And I was like, oh, what kind of floats your boat? And she liked food, but the things she adored the most were bubbles. So I went on Amazon because I thought bubbles were kind of cool, and they have different types of flavors of them, and you flip them on and off. And so then I was able to get training in with the activity of bubbles versus using treats. So I'd flip the bubbles on. I'm like, okay, go get it. So she'd go running and jumping and grabbing at the bubbles, and it was adorable and super cute. And then I stopped the bubbles, and then she came back, and I'm like, okay, down. She laid down and waited. Ready, set, go. And I flipped the bubbles on. She'd go running again, jumping and biting and so forth. She was exhausted from it, but she had such fun that her parents are buying one for her too. I'm like, good idea, because they were surprised, like, oh my gosh, she's off leash. She's, and I have a lot of property where there's not a lot of activity, and she was willing to go run away and then come back and do it again, and it was super cute. So. And then I have other dogs who are like, that's stupid. I don't care about bubbles. I do it, but she'd be the only one who cared. And in the background, she's jumping and biting them. And the others are like, we don't understand, but we're going to go play ball and run and play with each other. Right. So it is so relative to the individual dog. I think, there's a thing called free work, if anybody's heard of it. But basically you kind of test out what the dog's like, whether there's different surfaces or different kinds of food and stuff like that. But you set it up in a room, and then you let the dog go and see what kind of floats their boat, try different activities and things to do. So it's pretty interesting. And behavioral situations, they'll use that to kind of help the dogs relax a bit and take the onus off of them, and talk to the owner while the dog's kind of doing their own thing and relaxing. So it's pretty interesting.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah. And that's, I feel like people who use a lot of toys, especially in your training programs, or, things that you play with a lot, every 6 months or so. It's a really cool exercise if you've never tried it, right? We have a lot of toys here, so and at my facility, so I got like 2 garbage bags full of toys, and boom, I put them in a big pile in the middle, and I let the dogs out, and they just sort of rooted around, and they'd pick one, maybe 2, maybe 3, right? And then one of my dogs was like, chuck it. And I was like, what about this? Chuck it. I'm like, how about this one? I don't want that. I want my chuck it ball. Right. And so it was just funny because, like, with all of these options, I want the thing that I always have. That is my favorite thing.
Right.
And I was like, okay, good test. Right.
Right.
So for me to assume you still love that chuck it ball more than anything else, I actually asked my dog the question, and he said,
Yep.
chuck it.
Yeah.
Right. Because sometimes we get hung up on like, oh, this has been his favorite toy since he was a baby. And really the dog's like, I would play with anything else if you would give it to me.
Right.
So it's nice to give them a choice. And like I do the same thing with food treats too. So like, right, this 3 to 6 month window is your favorite. And then you can sort of do like the pick one of my hands, or put them, in like sealed containers, and just by smell, right, see which one the dog's really going to hang out, lick, stick on, go back to more. And you can mix it up.
Right. That's funny. So the next category is social interactions with you, which goes back to the chuck it ball, or other dog friendly dogs. So this is where we're not big fans of dog parks, but I am a fan of, if your dog has some friends that they get along with well and they play nicely, sometimes those social interactions are really great, because dogs are social animals. And again, this doesn't mean that every dog needs to have doggy friends, because every person doesn't need to have a whole bunch of friends, right? So if they have a friend or 2 that they get to play with and socialize and be with, that's good enough, right? They can handle that's all you need to do. And also bring a lot of you to the table, which, I'll be honest, sometimes I'm guilty of. Like, I get so busy and so wrapped up in my work that my dog sometimes don't get a lot of me. So sometimes I have to make sure I make time to do that. And lately it's been really bad because I've had so much going on. So it was nice, it's finding time to be able to just spend time with them and just do stuff that they want to do.
The one thing that I do as well, is during the day school, depending on who the dogs are. So if the dog is a little bit sensitive, we had a little shepherd puppy come, and she was a little sensitive. So then I brought my guys out, and they're like, ball, ball, ball. And they talked to me. So I kind of ignored the dog. And she was like, I don't know, I'm scared. But then when she goes, oh, they're having fun, and the attention's not on her, it actually helped boost her confidence. And so then after a bit, she started feeling comfortable. It's one of the reasons why I personally select dogs that are sociable with other dogs, because that's important to me, because I want to be able to help those dogs that need some doggy skills around appropriate dogs. And it doesn't mean that my dogs are going to help open up the world to all dogs, but it's interesting to see it develop and how they learn, because they're pretty fair about some of their information that they're communicating. I think I posted something the other day, and I was laughing up a storm because it's Ivy and her little face, where she's giving the side eye and stuff like that. And she's chewing up a horn. It's on my Facebook page. Cadence is chewing a horn. She's like, oh, chewing, chewing, chewing. She's all happy. And then Ivy's sitting there looking around, side-eyeing her, like, when you're done, I really want that. But she's at a distance. In comes Pan in between them, stretches, sniffs a little bit, lays down. I'm just going to lay here cutting in line. And Ivy's like giving her the side eye. And I look at that video over and over again, and her expression just kills me every time, because she is so, just her little face, her RBF face. It's adorable. So but it's very interesting, right, to see the communication. And one person had said on the Facebook page, on my page, it said, well, how do you, that doesn't, the one dog's uncomfortable. I'm like, not really, they're having a conversation, right? And knowing when to step in and when not to is important. And I think that's what's missing when you go to like dog parks, or if you take your dog to a daycare program where they're running rampant. The problem is rehearsing high arousal, and there's really no instruction guidance. And that to me is very concerning, because I want the dogs to be efficiently learning. So
Right. And that's what it's like. It's there's no, it's a structured play is the key word, right?
Right.
And that's what I mean for social. It's a positive interaction with you or other dogs, right? It's got to be structured and positive. And again, if even if it's only one dog, that's
Right.
good enough.
Right.
Yeah.
I think too, the other thing I would also to tell people is, like, even if you have friends' dogs that you're interacting with, rehearse calling out a play and then having them do stuff with you, then go play and do that stuff back and forth. Because I mean, I do that as well when we have dogs out, and then call them out and be like, hey guys, come on and sit. And then we share cookies. Now, of course, I'm careful, and I know the dogs, because if a dog has known guarding issues, depending on the age and the severity, I might not do that situation. But usually with the younger pups, they're usually sussing things out and determining who they can get away with stuff with. So usually that works okay.
Yeah.
Yep. I got one more social one. This one, take it or leave it. I used an animal communicator just to kind of check in and see how my dogs were, and whether or not you believe in that, right? I thought this lady was fantastic. But anyway, she said, and you guys are going to crack out, Nancy's going to roll her eyes, right? She said, Noah, which is my Vizsla, he really enjoys listening to your voice, right? And so,
Oh God,
so
ridiculous.
well, and if you ever know me, like, I have a lot of inflection when I talk to my dogs, right? We just do a lot of different. And so she said, if you're reading a book or reading anything, she goes, I might just read it aloud. And it's so funny. I started doing that a little bit, and he will come over and he just curls up and he puts his little head on my lap.
Oh my God, it's ridiculous.
I had to take a video of it. It's the cutest thing ever. But he clearly is like, hi, mommy, like, and he'll just lay there as long as it happens. So I thought, well, that's interesting. But it's yet another piece, right? He enjoys that. Mm-hmm. I would have never thought of doing that. Why would I read to my dog? But
it's interesting you say that, because one of the studies when I was researching all the stuff about the shelter and stuff like that, one of the things they talk about doing is actually, instead, classical music is great, but one of the other things they recommend doing was playing audio of somebody reading a book to the dogs.
Oh.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting, right? But it kind of makes sense too. Like, there's a local rescue that I know that does giant paw prints, and they do a little program for reading for dogs where the volunteers come in and read for the pups and stuff like that. But it's a good social interaction, right? Because it's no pressure. I'm just sitting there reading to you. It's your choice to close space or not. So it's very fascinating that in that regard too.
Yeah, no, it is, and that's why the program, oh my God, I can't remember.
I know what you're talking about. I can't remember.
Where kids can read to the dog. It helps the kids read, but it also, for some of the dogs who really enjoy it, it's really a very, very enriching environment for the dog. So, and for dogs that really, enjoy that social interaction, because my shepherd is kind of like Joanne's Vizsla. He's all about the social interaction and the voice and the whole thing. So every dog is very different that way. The last thing is having a safe environment to rest, relax, play, and what I mean for that is, like, if you have small children, having, the dogs need to break. They need to have a safe environment to be, and to be able to relax and just hang out without the being bothered. So that's really important for, as part of their enrichment, right? If there's because people think, and we've seen it, and most of you have probably seen some of the videos where the dog's really not enjoying the social interaction with the dog, right? They're not enjoying it. It's not fun for the dog, and they're just thinking it's, they just let the kids do whatever they want to the dog, which isn't what what the deal is. It's like they're supposed to be the dog and the child are supposed to, they're supposed to be cohabitate happily, not where one is got to put up with, just like people, right? So, oh, your dog's listening to meeting pause. That's it, Debbie. That program, right? So, yeah. Um, Extended training seems to get them overtired and crabby. Time to sleep. Yeah, honey.
Me
So,
too.
yeah, right. Um, the other thing I wanted to let's see, I wanted to um, somebody mentioned it. I think it was who
The
was it?
baby pool.
Yes, the baby pool. The baby pool. Somebody, I think Suzanne did this. She had a baby pool full of like plastic bottles and stuff, and she just put treats in there. And again, your dog should enjoy the noise and the activity, right? She also took some pieces, and I like the water bottle idea because they're bigger and all that. She also had some pieces of like foam and stuff in there, and then put treats in there where the dog would have to forage for that. But again, being mindful about what your dogs can and can't do. But that's another. If you're not going to dig a hole in your yard for sand, that's another option is a kiddie pool with some stuff they can dig or forage in there and find stuff. So I've had people do a kiddie pool for the sand, so the dog can get in there and dig and forage for stuff and all that. So those are also some other options that you can try. But so that brings us to the dog sports. Those of us who do dog sports, mostly the dogs have a pretty enriched life anyway. They go to training class every week. They go to training class every week. Um, they go to trials or whatever. They get to go on a trip with their handlers and stuff. Obviously, hopefully your dogs are enjoying all those pieces, right? Because that's the rub, right? Your dogs are hoping they're enjoying that part of their life, and they're enjoying that enrichment part of being, having that lifestyle. Because that's one thing I always tell folks, right? Your dog didn't sign up to do the dog sports, so you better make sure that they are enjoying the dog sport. They are enjoying everything that comes with it, right? Car rides, being around other dogs, going to training class, being in a crate, all of those things that are part of that activity, your dog, that should be also enjoyable for your dog. That should also be something that your dog enjoys and that your dog likes, so it is an enriching environment. But if your dog is having difficulty with some of those things, then you have to really consider how enriching is that for your dog, right? So the dog sports in and of itself is, I mean, that's why we're doing them, right? It's a social situation for us, but it's also a social situation for your dogs, right? So you want to give them the skills to be able to handle that life, right? Like they should enjoy being around other dogs. They don't have to have tons of friends, but they should be okay around other dogs. They should be okay being around people. They should be okay. And again, that doesn't mean that if you have a dog that may have some of those issues, training that first and then trying the sport is worth doing, not the other way around. People are like, well, he's great at it. Now they didn't work on all the other stuff that comes with that, which is the part that is challenging, because then you didn't give the training to the dog to be able to be in a car, be in a crate, whatever, and now he's great at the sport, and now you're going to try to force that instead of making that part of your training. All those things, being in a car, being in a different place, all those things.
Yeah, Sue has a great comment. And my dogs enjoy it all, but sometimes I'm not enjoying it so much, right? So, Sue, I mean, I know you know this, but right, just to everyone, it's okay if you never want to compete in something, right? If you enjoy your classes and your dogs love the game, they don't know if they're at a trial or if they get to do their favorite game every week, right? So if you're having a moment and it's a miserable time for you, play the game in your backyard, and then you'll both have more enjoyable time, right? And I think there's not enough of that, right? It's like, well, my dog can do this sport, right? It doesn't mean they have to, right? Or it doesn't mean that, maybe we'll go really slow and we'll only compete in our home venue, or, places that I know are trusted and that they're very comfortable in, right? Instead of like dragging them to new spaces or whatever.
Right. And some dogs over time, Deb Evans with Mindy, she did mostly NACSW, which is nose work, where that it was easier for a dog that has a little bit of reactivity to be able to enjoy the sport and all that stuff. So it's lovely. Um, but now she's been doing it so long, and nose work has made such a difference for that dog. She was able to do an AKC trial where there is a lot more dogs, a lot more close proximity to dogs, and she navigated the whole weekend with really no problem at all. She was
Some
able to
jerky
get
dogs barking next to her.
yeah, exactly.
Who that could have been.
And
I
she
think,
was
though,
able to
I
manage
think
it.
ultimately it comes down to the fact that, develop that relationship, know your dog, know what their likes and dislikes, what they're comfortable with. And I think enrichment helps you see another aspect of who you're working with and who that individual is, to help them kind of move into a direction that's comfortable for both of you. Um, like at the center, when at the shelter, we have a room, and it was a conference room that we converted kind of into a training room. We put rubber flooring down, and then I set stuff up out, and like we'll have the dogs come out and kind of let them decompress and see who they are, and then see if they can experience doing more enrichment stuff. Can you do this? Can you do this? What if I have food? What if I don't? And it helps us learn a little bit more about who that dog is in terms of placement. But it's critical to help the dog to decompress and have the choice, the freedom of choice, that ability to say, I like this, I don't like this, I'm tapping out. And then you have to listen to it, right? And I think that's really important, because you're learning as much about the partner you're choosing to be in your life and who they are. That's going to affect the relationship you have with them moving forward.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I was just talking with Karen and Deb about they're in the process or considering adding to their family. So now that they have a certain lifestyle or a different, situation that they have with their dogs, then they can be more fair and finding a dog that's going to fit into that lifestyle instead of getting the dog and making it fit, right? And then that way everybody's going to be happy and the dog will be where it belongs. Because with some placements with dogs, whether it be a breeder or whether it be a shelter, sometimes it's not, it's like, the dog isn't what you thought it was, and it's not a good match for you or for your family, right? So it's one of those things you definitely want to think about that as you going forward. Like, it may not be that he's a bad dog; he just doesn't fit in your home. And some of the things that you might see wherever they came from, whether it's a shelter or whether it's a foster home, you may not have those issues because your home, your lifestyle is better situation for the dog, right? So that's kind of things to consider when you're because and this is what I mean. Getting a dog should be an addition as a part of the family, in addition to the family, not just a possession, which is unfortunately what a lot of people, treat the dogs like. It's a possession. It's a thing. Just, we're a family, we have kids, we should have a dog. No, you shouldn't. Not if you don't really want one or want it to be part of the family. You don't have to have one. Your children can enjoy dogs in other places. I'm sure there's people with children and with dogs they can go visit and they can have that experience without having to have a dog in the house.
They
Right?
can join the reading program.
Yep.
Right. Right. So it's one of so that's something to consider, right? Like you adding up having enrichment, and if you do stuff with your dogs on a regular basis and activities, they're already having an enriched life, right? Like those of us that do a lot that do dog sports, our dogs do a lot of stuff with us. My dogs go to work with me every single day. they are that is part of their lifestyle. They're more active. They don't every once in a while they have to stay home with nothing to do, but just because that's something that they have to be able to do as well, right? But but moreover, their life is pretty busy. There's always something to do, somewhere to go all the time, and it's pretty interesting because I get ready and they're already assuming they're going with all the time. So anyway, but and that's what it is. Just really looking and see what your dog is and enjoying whatever that activity is. So when you get a dog, you definitely want to, give them what. And again, like Joanne said, you don't have to compete. You can just go to class. We had a client for, I think the dog passed away recently, and she used to go to agility class every week. Never competed. Just went to class every week and just loved it. Enjoyed it very much. Never stepped foot in a ring. Never drove to a competition. He just went to class every week, and that was their time together. That was it.
Yeah, and too, I think leaving, because a lot of people that watch us are sporting people, right? Don't just end that dog's
Oh yes,
career, right? When they're so used to being with you and being a part of you, and right, there's moments where senior dogs, right? Yeah, you stay home on the couch because it's really busy and it's going to be too much for you. But I watched a dog compete this weekend, and I think she said the dog was 16 years old, and it had a long agility career. And she goes, "Oh my gosh," she goes, "she still lives for it." She goes, "I won't do it, right?" Because she goes, "But we still train at home with no bars, so she gets to run her little course with no bars up." And she said she is just thrilled to do it. And we were talking about, she goes, "Oh, she loved the competition so much. She just loved all the people." And I said, there's venues that let you do FEO. Why don't you go with a toy or whatever and ask them to take the bars out and run? She goes, "Oh my gosh, that's such a good idea." But how interesting too, right? Nosework came to her because she didn't want to just stop her dog's sporting career, right? The dog, again, enjoyed going with her and enjoyed doing the things. And so that's how she came to Nosework. So it was, I love the seniors, but man, that dog just came in. She was so happy to just be on that start line, right? Like working with her mom. So
right. And that's what I mean. And then a lot of us worry about our dog's age as they get older, but the dogs will tell us when they're done, when they don't want to play the game anymore. They're really good about it.
That's sweet. Erin says when her dog retired from agility, her agility job was to help her husband pick up the number cones after class. She loved it because it was her job. See, that's great. They still get to be a part of things. Then you don't have to worry about their bodies or anything like that. And they're still a big part of class, and they're out on the course, and just keeping them a part of things is so important.
Right. And you just modify it as you go. Because I remember as Kaiser got older and was ready, he loved agility. And so it would take him before we'd go home for the day. He'd run no bars and just ran around. And he just really loved it. It was just made him, just made him feel like they're doing something. And also, sorry, those of us who, one of the things I do agree, and I see it all the time. Some of the time when we do, those of us who do dog sports, our dogs do live much longer lives for the most part, because they're more physically in good shape, and mentally they stay. There's not a lot of canine dementia or anything like that. It could happen to any, but more of the dogs that are mentally stimulated and stuff, they do tend to live a little bit longer. So it just adds it extends their life and adds so much quality to their lives.
Yes, but if you stop and make them those couch potatoes, the cognition falls. I would say probably the same rate ideally, but it's not, because it's just such a quicker drop. You see it so much more noticeably when they don't get to use that brain anymore. So
right.
Even if it's toys and tricks and stuff like that, just keep those brains engaged.
Right. And so that way they can, because it's the same with people, right? People who retire that, because our dog community, a lot of our people are retired, and they're doing the dog sports. Some of the people that I get to see, it's like amazing how old they are, and you'd never know it. They look so awesome because they're keeping busy, they're keeping engaged. So while Sue Poor says they poop me out, that's why she looks the way she does. She looks pretty spry, and she's at her age doing all this stuff and keeping busy. Those dogs, they keeping her active and busy is really is a great thing. So for sure, they do. That's a very mutually beneficial situation there, right? They keep us busy, and we stay younger. So do they. So it's a win-win on that stuff for sure. So doing all that. Anyway, so I hope you guys got some ideas on how to keep your dogs enriched. Again, most of you guys that we see on a regular already do a lot of stuff. But if you don't, or if you have a situation where you can't have, you don't have time to exercise, or you can't, or you physically are not able, you have something come up, you definitely want to, so hopefully this will help. Just going to do it for therapy. Hopefully, yep. And I love that, right? Therapy work is also pretty awesome for a lot of the dogs. I know I need to get my shepherd into that because he would be great at it. Anyway, hope you found this helpful. Tune in next week. I think can't remember what next week's topic is. We're trying to stay ahead of the game, you guys, so we have a schedule going. Anyway, look for our post with the upcoming schedule and what we're covering for the next couple of weeks. And we'll see you soon. Have a great night and have a great rest of your weekend. Thank you.
Yes. Thanks, Kat. Great to see you.
Yeah, Kat. Oh my God, it's been ages.
She's retired now.
Yeah. She's keeping pretty busy though. All right, all.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.